Because you know there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. Not
It's all
conspiracy.
about control. To them we just cattle, numbers, battling each other while they creeping in the shadows, scheming, plotting, clocking your every move, locked in your mind, brainwashed until it's rocking. Got the population operating as they want them, symbolically mocking them, thinking nothing can stop them. So open your eyes to the lies of the evil, the poison in the minds and the lives of your people. And every time they lead you down the line to deceive you, and by then it's always too late to see through the veil that they hide behind, cause your third eye is blind. Better take a stand, we running out of time. Ain't nobody coming to save us, fuck what you had in mind. Arm yourself with the truth and jump behind the battle line. Can we turn it around? Yeah, it's possible. Divided we'll all fall, but united we're unstoppable. This is for the world, this is for the masses, attached to the strings being pulled by puppet masters. This is for the youth, searching for the proof, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some truth. This is for the ones waking up from the spell, beginning to discover themselves. Yeah, this is for the youth, searching for the truth, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some proof. This is for the world. Yeah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. I'm your host, James Cordiner, and today is February 11th, 2023, and we're off to a little bit of a rocky start here. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. Hopefully, if the video is coming through, somebody get on the comments right now and tell me that the video is coming through. Please and thank you. In the meantime, I'm assuming that the audio is correct. I've prepared a brief statement here, and so before we begin, I would like to read this, and it's kind of synchronistic that this should be the message that I start the show with this week, considering what we have planned for our discussion this evening. I'll be bringing in Brandon Martin in just a moment, so please bear with me, and please do not turn away from this. We are under attack. Every single moment of every single day, our rights and freedoms, they're being taken away from us. It is the natural progression of conscious life to be free. Our spirit desires freedom. This is our true purpose here, to attain and maintain real, true, unbridled freedom. A clear and firm understanding of the laws of behavioral consequence is just the start. One must bring that understanding of the information regarding such laws into harmony with their actions. To say and not do really just shows your lack of commitment, your lack of understanding, your lack of care. To say and not do just shows how little you really know. Now, creating content is a great way to share the knowledge that you have gained. It is actually a very important and very needed method to gain traction, to gain an advantage in this war. But it is not everything. To think that it's everything just shows your own ineptitude of ability to make an actual difference. As a content creator myself, I recognize and understand a desire to shout my knowledge from the rooftops, to share it with everyone I come into contact with, something that I've kind of dubbed the Paul Revere syndrome. This is not necessarily a bad thing to want. This is not necessarily a bad thing to do. But not everyone is going to want to hear it from me. Not everybody's going to, want to hear it from just about everyone. I certainly know that there are certain people that I do not jive with, that I do not want to hear it from. Oh, well, so sad, too bad. But that's the beautiful part of creating this content. There are a lot of voices out there. a voice does exist, like a voice that one that a voice that one can find relation to, a voice that people can really hold on to. This is what makes the One Great Work Network such a beautiful thing. And here's the part of my speech here where things might get a little spicy. And this is unlike me to speak of such things in public or on my show. It's not really what I like to do, but I really feel that this needs to be addressed. I refuse to name any names. This would only draw more attention to this individual who I am addressing. Drawing attention to this individual is the opposite of what I want. You should know who you are. If not now, then maybe in a moment or two. Your actions this week, in my opinion, have betrayed you. Your actions this week have shown your true colors. Yeah, I've actually written this down. We know that you consider yourself to be very knowledgeable. You seem to believe that you have the right to others' attention, a right you do not have. Maybe a response that you receive in regards to your request to go on another show is not to your liking. Get over it. You aren't meant to get along with everyone. To take a private conversation and share it with others in an attempt to discredit another person is a sign of your own immaturity. Maybe it isn't to discredit anyone. Maybe you're just trying to show others how much of a victim you are. I cannot decide which is worse. The point is, we are at war. Do you think this is a game? Do you think this is a joke? There exists real forces at play, forces that will stop at nothing to see us in chains, enslaved both physically and mentally. And you are concerned about someone refusing to have you on their podcast. Grow up, get over yourself, and move along. You do not only make yourself look bad, but you sully the good name of everyone who works their asses off to wake people up to what is really happening here. We do not have time for your childish games and attitude. By now, you should know who you are. Words cannot describe the gratitude I have to have been invited onto the One Great Work Network, a place where I am mostly surrounded by true adults who know what is at stake, true warriors on the battlefield. To see that my colleagues and I are dragged into your dramatic bullshit fills me with both shame and rage. A sense of shame to be associated with the likes of you, and a rage that comes from a desire to protect that which I care about. We need real men. We need real women, not petulant children such as yourself. I hope you grow up while there still is time. I hope this message reaches you. As mad or angry as I am, I still have love for you, though. Or else, why would I do this? Why would I say anything at all? I'll repeat it again. We are at war. Act accordingly. Inner growth first. Then you teach others. Your actions betray you. Why don't you eat some peyote and think about that? Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. I'm sorry to have to bring that kind of energy coming right out the gate like that. But synchronistically enough, Brandon Martin is here, and we decided just over a week ago to discuss this very thing. Okay, the title of tonight's show is Warriors in a Spiritual Battle. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Thank you, Brandon, for coming in and joining us this evening. Thank you for being patient with my little speech there at the beginning. How are you today, brother?
Oh, I'm doing amazing right now. I've taken a little bit of a hiatus from doing the work, and I just got moved into my new house and getting settled. And very happy to have a better internet connection now, so I can actually do high quality streaming with everybody and not really have to worry about the internet dropping in and out. I had internet speeds of 2.5 megs download and less than that upload where I was before. So now I'm at 1 gigabyte up and down. So it's a huge difference, obviously. So I'm very happy, very, very excited and motivated to get back onto the great work. So it's an honor to be here again with you, James. Always love talking to you. And the speech was well done. I think it's something that we need to see more of. And by golly, you wrote something down. Oh my God, do people still do that nowadays? I mean, seriously, I have
Oh,
notebooks full of stuff, and people walk in my house. They're like, "What? What do you do? Like, how do you write so much?" I'm like, "I just write." you know.
just write it down.
So yeah, and just like, and when thoughts come to my mind, I write stuff down. So very important. I like the transcribe episode. So this is something I could give a recommendation for any viewership for people who are really trying to learn things. Take podcasts like Mark Passio's podcast, or even documentaries, or whatever it might be. Manly P. Hall lectures. I've done this for Manly P. Hall lectures. Transcribe them down. Write them down. Write them all out. And
Yeah.
man, that knowledge will stick with you so much easier, and it will, calcify in your mind very quickly. And then also you have a notebook that you can go to and be like, oh, here it is. And a lot of that stuff's not in textual form. Like all those lectures from Manly P. Hall are not in textual form. So um, really important to do things like that, I feel. If you're a serious student, then you're going to be doing whatever you can with that stuff, because like you said, we're in a spiritual war, and it's all about liberty, it's all about freedom. And I can see a little spiritual being back there that it's all about.
Yeah, and
So
he's turning on the TV right now, which he knows he's not supposed to do. But it's Saturday, so
yeah.
we have fun on Saturdays, and it's all good, you know. So he's usually in bed by this time. But yeah, there's something about writing things down where it bridges the gap of like the mind body connection there, where it like really kind of really just like, you know, pushes that knowledge or that information right in there. Like something about writing it down, it's like you're you're physically like doing something for it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's tough to really kind of explain it at the moment because a little distracted.
It's all good.
But it's
It's all
okay.
good.
So this evening, we really wanted to talk about this being a warrior on in a spiritual battle here. And I couldn't think of many other people that I'd rather talk to about this than you. Because a lot of people see what's going on and it's like, oh, it's just all physical realm type stuff. It's all
Mm.
just, and it's like, no, 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 no. Like it's a lot more than that, really, because, our bodies are really a vessel for our spirit. And it's like, okay, there's a lot of things that can happen in the physical realm here, but really what's going on is they're after our spirit, god damn it. Like it's a battle for our souls, our eternal soul here. And it's like, man, I know a lot of people know this already, but I guess what I'm trying to get at here is like there's a lot of people that could really get some use out of a discussion like this. So you've been doing this for a very long time. You've been learning about these things for a very long time, and you've been on the front lines of this for even longer than certainly myself. You're one of the people that has inspired me to really start acting and being an active voice, and get some action under my belt. But what has been your experience in this? How do you see this?
I definitely see that a lot of people tend to ignore the metaphysical and spiritual aspect of this battle, especially atheists, when it comes to the atheistic mindset, or materialist, right? So everybody looks at the symptoms, but they never look beyond that. And like you said, it is a battle for your soul. It is a battle. It's not just liberty for your physical being, it's liberty for your spirit. You know, we need also liberty for the mind, the capital M mind, because just like here's a little thing I said the other day, is that when they limit your freedom of speech, they limit your freedom to be able to think, right? Because we think in words. Well, it's the same thing. It's like a feedback loop. When they limit our ability to physically move or physically express our liberties or our freedoms, they're limiting the potential for our healthy spiritual expression into manifestation, which actually declines our evolutionary ability. because we can't actually evolve into a higher type. We can't evolve our own consciousness. We can't interact with society and build better communities. We can't interact with our families the way that we really need to, so and that's all. It's all about bridging the spirit and matter. And it's always like a left brain egghead approach that there is no such thing as the spiritual war that's going on. There's a reason why we say we have spirit in something that we do physically, right? Like this person has spirit when they're doing something, like they have the energy, they have the motive, they have the tenacity or the ambition to go and do these things. But we also say they have spirit there. There's a reason why we say that. It's because they're exerting a fundamental purity of their nature into something that they love. Like someone who, like myself, I was a professional skateboarder for 15, maybe 20 years. And I had a lot of spirit in that, and you could see that being manifested in my creativity and the way that I do those things. And they want to make sure to limit the religious dogma, dogmatic thinking, to make sure that we cannot express that spiritual nature into physical manifestation. Because if we can, they have no control over us, because we're so powerful when our true spirit comes out in our creativity, like an artist or someone who's trying to bring free energy to the forefront, like Tesla. Think about how much spirit he had in his work, that he put out there. But yeah, I see so many people just denying the aspect of spirit in itself. And I know it can be very difficult coming from a left brain perspective, and how much of a struggle a lot of people will have hitting that barricade. But like if you study enough quantum mechanics coming from the left brain, you're going to end up back at the spiritual nature of things. A lot of people like Planck, quantum theorists and very, very influential scientists, quantum scientists that have been out there, they always end up back that there is a creative force or, a creative entity that governs this realm, that has put the laws into effect that we have to live by and abide, which is natural law. And that wants us to actually express freedom. That's our purpose here, is to express freedom, because freedom brings about evolution. It brings about syntropy, right? The counteractive force of entropy. Not saying that entropy is all bad, because it's a polarity. It needs to be there. But we always hear about entropy. We never hear about syntropy. So we need to have that syntropic force in nature. And that's what we do with our creativity, with our will. And it's a channeling force that we manifest into reality, So I think that a lot of people get stuck. They get stuck just on the symptoms of the physical issues, economic issues, whatever it might be, just the symptoms in the physical realm. Mass shootings, political issues, physical wars that are going on, and they don't understand the causality of that we all have a spiritual sickness going on that's aiding and festering this whole issue that's going on in the world. And until we heal ourselves internally, because it's all about starting to work from within, we will never see a change in the physical world. So that's why we have to become spiritual warriors. You can't be a warrior until you go through your rites of manhood or womanhood. You have to go through your rites of passage, and mostly those rites of passage don't hit people until they're of the ages of like 27 or 28 to 33. And that's because the brain chemistry changes at that point. There's a reason why in totemic societies, that's when they initiated you into the higher mysteries, or in the mystery schools. There's a reason for that biologically. It's because then you can connect to yourself at a higher level and you can really get the whole picture. So I don't even think most people are adults until they're at that age. I don't like this arbitrary number of like 18 and then you're an adult, out of nowhere. And it's like most people when they're 18 are, most adults we know nowadays are still infantile,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we know that, so can we really treat them as adults when they have the mindset of a child, you know? And I mean, really, I have to talk to people who are older than I, who have went to college, who have graduated, who, make six figures sometimes. It's like, and you got to talk to them like they're 6, 7 years old, And I'm like, how the hell did you make it in this world? Like seriously. And they have no idea what's going on. They don't get the chemtrails, they don't get the toxicity in the foods, the vaccines. They're completely recalcitrant against everything. They look at it as all just conspiracy. There's no way that there could be an interconnected global control satanic network that is working together to bring about the erosion of freedom long term through incrementalism, you know?
Mhm. Yep, there's a lot of grown children out there for sure. That's the school system for you. That's one of their main purposes is to perpetuate childhood in this infant kind of mindset because that makes people easier to control. Really, what it is. I like what you said about having to do in my little speech there about having to do the inner work first. You need to evolve your consciousness before you can really be a player. You got to understand like what is really going on here, what is at stake. I mean, Christ, it's more than most people can even begin to fathom. And it needs to start at an early age. The understanding of really like what's at stake here, what it does mean to be free, and how we've been lied to about that for the majority of our lives. And the majority of people they'll just never see it. They have the potential to. I do believe about the plasticity of people's minds, that is very much true. It can the mind can change. You can teach an old dog new tricks, so to speak. But how do we get through to people? That's the big question, right? You got to find something that person might care about. You got to get their attention somehow. And the second you start talking about, spirituality, most people just tune right out.
Right,
Even
right.
even people that consider themselves to be religious, where you go, oh well, that's a spiritual person, but no, they've just been taught a bunch of dogma that's just kept them in chains. You can only like was it Mark who used to say about climbing the mountain in the tent pictures? It's
Mm,
like,
yep.
you gotta go all the way to the top, baby. You gotta go all the way. And hey, there's a lot of us that are still on the journey. I know that I learn new things all the time. I think that's a healthy perspective to have. To learn, I'm open to learn new things. There's certain things that I absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt are true, and it has to do with behavior and the consequences, like the laws of nature, all of that wonderful information that I've taken in, and I know it now. I know it to be true. But it's like there's a lot of people out there who just refuse to hear it. They have a block. It's like they know, no, no, no. There's no way I should be held responsible for my actions. That's what most people's mindset is. Like, no, I have to be able to have a scapegoat. I have to be able to have someone else who's supposed to come in and clean it all up, clean the big mess up. Not me. It'll never be me. I can't be the one to be doing it. It's like, no, that's the fundamental difference between like people like you and I and most other people, that they don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to change, so it's a big problem, and I think the biggest hurdle that us as people who are trying to scream this message, like again from the rooftops, like, hey, there's a better way, and everyone's like, yeah, 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 whatever, and well, how much money is that going to put in my wallet, or oh, can't pay the mortgage with that. Like,
Right, right.
you know what I mean? So it's really disturbing to me that even at this point, like oh man, I think about it all the time. Our spirit, it we it is the driving factor toward this evolution of consciousness. And that is the part that is being suppressed mostly through all like the media, everything. It's all to keep your mind in a low state of consciousness, keep you in a low vibratory state where you're not exploring the ways of the universe, the things that are occulted. Like that's the first part of waking up, is realizing that there's a plethora of information and knowledge out there that has been just hidden and suppressed from the human consciousness, that's actually available if you really know where to look for it. It's ready and available for you to just eat it all up, num 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 num, and to and to take it in and to apply it to your life. And it's a beautiful thing. Once you get started, you can't stop. And it's like the fun, I guess, that people really need to understand is that, like, the ones that are being put on this pedestal of like, oh, those are the people that are in power. It's like, no, you are the person who's in power. We are all individually like in power of what happens here. And um we collectively create the reality that we're in, the things that happen here. You live in the Midwest, I live on the East Coast. I take actions every day that, whether I know it or not, they find a way to affect your life. And we have friends on the West Coast, same idea. And man, that's, to me, like, what we need is more people to wake up to this knowledge, to wake up to these facts, that we are we we are under attack. And most people don't like hearing it like that. They don't, and they think that it's all a bunch of hullabaloo, and it's not. It's very real what we're dealing with here, folks. It's very fucking real. So you can take it from there.
Yeah, it's very serious. I try to put myself in the mindset of an individual. I think of it as like a fully domesticated, young female who has just been completely devoured by their parents, just completely codependent on their parents, completely suppressed and oppressed in all ways. And then you come to them and you try to tell them that they're being attacked. Their first reaction is going to be fear, and they're going to go into survival mode. And a lot of times they're going to go, in most of the cases, like what you're talking about, they're going to go into denial, unless it's like a baseball flying right at their face, or somebody right in their presence doing it. And that's the issue here, is that there's a disconnect between the attack and the victims of the attack. See, we don't see the effects of those things until later. A lot of people don't actually feel the effect of these attacks onto us until time has passed, in most cases. And this is the issue, is because they don't actually see these things taking place in their own lives. They're not aware of these things taking place. So if it actually like happened instantaneously in their face, they may be more likely to actually step up and try to defend themselves, because we all do have a natural instinct to want to defend ourselves. Some philosophers have even said that self-defense is the oldest law of nature. And I can get behind that in a certain aspect, because why wouldn't it be? It has to self-preserve. We have to be able to preserve our own liberties and our own ability to exist here. But you can't take it to such a level that you become selfish, or get into the mini me Satanism mindset, or moral relativism, or anything like that, where you just dictate everything for your own self and your own benefits and your own survival. So there has to be, you're walking a fine line with that. But yeah, I think of it that way, and I try to feel it out. Like, how can I approach this person and get them to awaken to these attacks that are being done, that are bombarding onto them every single day? Because it's just constant. I mean, as an example, I try to give people examples of, like, let's say a police officer pulls you over, you're speeding, right? And he actually lets you go, right? He doesn't give you a ticket, he doesn't do anything, he lets you go. And I hear this time and time again. Oh, he was such a nice officer, from guys too, not just girls, from guys as well. And they were like, yeah, he was so nice, he let me go, he was so cool, such a cool guy. And I'm like, No, no, he wasn't a good guy. He just pulled you over and he held you at coercive force. At any moment, that fucking situation could have flipped and he could have pulled that gun out and put you down. At any moment, he could have said you're resisting arrest. He could have said, made up any little thing, turned off his body cam. We see that all the time. You don't realize that there's another thing that they're stealing from you. They stole your time. They stole your time and your attention. So when they pulled you over, they stole your time immediately. And you, what are you supposed to do? You know, you're brainwashed into pulling over when you see the blue and red. You know, immediately you got to pull over because it's the authorities, right? They're the bane, they're the absolute bane of freedom, the order followers. You know, they're the foot soldiers of the dark occult. And I mean, it's just ridiculous when I hear that from people that they don't even get that they've been stolen from in that moment, that they've been coerced to do that because they have been coerced. The only reason they're doing it is because they've been brainwashed and because the person who's the officer has a gun, you know, and who's coming at them. And I'm not talking out against guns because we all need guns, but I'm saying that's why, you know, and it's because of fear, because people fear order followers. And so it's like you don't realize, a lot of people don't even realize where they're being attacked. That's my point about that. You know, they don't even realize where they're being stolen from. You know, it's like someone coming in your house and stealing something out of your house and you have no idea that it was stolen. And then like 4 or 5 days later, you're like, where did that item go? And you're like, oh, you know, I had like 3 people over here. Somebody stole something out of my house. You know, it's like,
somebody stole one of every pair of my socks.
Yeah. So imagine, so I take that example and I say, now multiply that by, you know, however many people are in the United States alone, right? Or in the world, you know, because this is happening every single day. Imagine how many police officers are just pulling people over and stealing their time and holding them at coercive force, you know, and everybody just thinks that's just fine and dandy. It's acceptable. You know, that's just acceptable behavior for a society to function. That police officers can stop you at any point that they want to, and you have to obey them. You know, you have no right to walk away, that you can't talk back to them. You can't even flip the bird off to them, even though it's not illegal to do that. You know, they literally will. Oh yeah, you shared that video, didn't you? Right. Yeah, that was funny. That kid flipping the bird off. It's like, yeah, it's like, what the hell?
He didn't do anything wrong.
No, he didn't do anything wrong. And good for that kid for standing up. He knew more about the constitutional rights, at least, you know, what has been documented, than those police officers did. You know, and he stood up for himself. I think he could have went about it a little bit better, but you know, he's young, so I give him credit for his tenacity there and his, you know.
I think he went about it perfectly. I've had and here's another thing too, is when you are being uneasy with a police officer pulling you over, they'll take offense to it.
Right.
And I've been pulled over, and in the same, and I had I've featured a couple clips of it on the show before because I videotaped it, and I was on the side of the road for an hour with this guy trying to tell him, like, you know, what you did is so wrong. You know, you flash the lights, I have to pull over, because as somebody that understands the progression of this interaction, I understand that if I don't, things are going to get real bad, and people could get hurt. And I could get blamed for those people getting hurt. Say, I know I've done nothing wrong. You're pulling me over for a tail light or a plate light. What gives you the right to do that? You know, like, show me this contract I signed, this social contract.
Right.
You know, but when you're a little wound up, they go, whoa, calm down. It's like, no, I can't, because you took my choices away from me, and excuse me, but when people start taking my choices away from me, I get a little wound up about that. I get a little upset about that, because I, you know, like, of course I have the choice, but I know where it's going to go. I know what's going to happen if I don't pull over, you know. And it's like, it's been admitted to me in the same conversation that it was a fishing expedition. His words, not mine. Pulling me over for something really insignificant to see if there's more that they can get
Right.
out of the car than just, hey, your taillight's out. Maybe I'm drunk, maybe this or that or the other thing or whatever. Maybe I have a warrant, give me your ID, and then they want to arrest you because you have some warrant for something or whatever. And it's like, okay, all of this really what it really comes down to is domination. It's a show of domination. And haha, you have to do this, and they know it. Haha, that's what they go and do when they're done. They go, they get off, they get their jollies from asserting dominance over people. And it's like, okay, on a spiritual level, that is like that is so infuriating to know that there are other humans. I barely can even get that word out of my mouth in this context, but there are humans out there that think that it's necessary to assert such dominance over their fellow person. It really is like at this point in time, it should disturb everybody equally the same. And we see it all the time. People are being abused to the point of death by these people. And to think that, like, oh, he was such a good guy, he didn't give me a ticket. Like, I love what you said about that, because it's like, well, look at everything else that he did to you, or she did to you. This costumed goon that just does nothing but assert dominance over other people all day long.
Right.
Look at what they did to you in the meantime. You're right. They stole the spiritual currency was stolen from you.
That's right.
And you're too worried about costumed thugs. They're a gang.
Yep.
They're nothing but a fancy gang in their little costumes. Look at them. Every day's Halloween. It's like, like I'm so tired of it. I really am. But these people need to be. They have. Here's something that might ruffle a few feathers in our community, but they have just as much of a right to show that they can change as anyone else does, and they need to be taught this information too. So to
Oh,
shut
I
them
agree.
up, we don't have the right, as people that have a higher consciousness, that understand this information. We have no right to keep it from them just because of their actions. They don't know what they're doing. It's like it says in the Bible, forgive them for they know not what they do. I believe Jesus even is the one that said that. I think that's a quote attributed to him. Not too familiar with the Bible. Don't get on my case about that, people. But for real, like, the idea of forgiving someone for being ignorant is something maybe people disagree with, but it could be a very good thing. And to give people an opportunity to change by teaching them this knowledge, it doesn't just apply to dominators like the police or the military. It applies equally to everybody. Teaching them this knowledge, and for an opportunity for the person that you're trying to teach it to change their actions, to be able to look inward and say, yeah, I have done wrong. I don't want to do that anymore. I did not understand what I was doing at the time. Please give me a chance to change. You get one chance, and that's it. That's it. And these people need to be taught too. So it's like as people that know this information, need to find a way to clearly communicate it with the people that are looking to dominate us in a way that is going to wake them up. Because you know what? There are times where, within the principles of natural law, those who do have the ability to defend others have the right to come to the defense of others. If one of my children got kidnapped, guess what? I'm calling them. I don't know what else to do. What else can I get a posse?
Well, you
together?
don't have any other options.
What else
That's
do I do?
that's the problem. You don't have any other options. See, in a society, in a stateless society, or an anarchistic society, you would have plenty of options for
yeah.
that kind of situation, right?
Right,
See,
and
they've
I'm
monopolized it.
just real quick, like I am aware of that.
Yeah,
First and
yeah.
foremost. Like, I want to make sure that the people listening to this know.
Oh,
Like,
I'm sure. Yeah,
I am definitely aware that you.
yeah. But what are you supposed to do? I understand
Right.
that absolutely.
In this
Yeah.
day and age, what are your options?
Yeah.
The point is that, like, there does exist the right for there to be a group at our disposal to call upon and be like, hey, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that group. I'm just saying that a function of that group that exists now isn't completely wrong. It's a lot of the other shit that they do, and you know this just as well as I do, that just because they do one good thing you cannot forgive them for all the other bad things that they do.
Right.
Right? There does not exist a good cop. It doesn't those that doesn't exist. But even the worst people can do a good thing from time to time, I guess, is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
get.
absolutely. I always try to point out there's a difference between the human being that's underneath the costume and the occupation. So when I say cop, I'm talking about the occupation and the ideology of the occupation, you know, like the ideological framework that they've taken up to be in that position, right? And what they have to do to stay in that position. Because if they do not do the orders, if they decide to exercise their conscience and say, okay, this kid has a bag of marijuana, and I'm not going to arrest him for this. I'm not even going to talk to him about it. Let him go. You know, if he gets found out about that, he could be fired for that. You know, so that there is a human being under there, and I think these human beings need to be uh, not only taught, but they need to be healed. They have to have self healing at some level. They need real psychological work to be done onto them. You know, and
Right.
that might take group work too. I know a lot of people don't like that, especially in our community. Everybody thinks you can just do it on your own. Well, I'm here to tell you I've been doing this for a long time, and sometimes you do need some external help, you
Yeah.
know, because sometimes you are that fucked up and you need somebody to come in and help you, you know. And anybody who says that, you know, you can just do it on your own, well, yeah, some people can. That's true. Some people can, but they're exceptions. Don't expect every single person to be able to do it on their own. You know, they need some kind of support in their life, whether it's a girlfriend, a wife, you know, whatever it might be, family, you know, a good, healthy mother figure, you know, that's a great thing. It's a really good thing to have, you
Yeah.
know. I've actually convinced and gotten through to a lot of order followers. I had a kid who came out to the skate park that I run at one point, and he was actually training for martial law, and he was working for, you know, the order following National Guard, and he was training there, and he was telling me about it, and I started talking to him about it just heavily, you know. And I mean, I wasn't being vitriolic. I was trying to get him to sympathize with what I was talking about, trying to get him to see it from my perspective. And by golly, in the next 3 months, he came back out, and he, you know, he had quit. You know, he had been dishonorably discharged or whatever. You know, and he never went back. And now he's flying anarchist flags. You know, so it's funny. He's such a good kid. But yeah, he's learned a lot. But I've done that left and right. I'm very happy to be able to get through to a couple of these people. Not many, but you know, it just even one makes me happy to get through to one order follower. You know, especially a young one. So once they get older, it's really hard to get them out of that, especially the guys that you look in their eyes and you can see that they are soulless. You know, I don't even want to say that really, but they just seem so absent, so empty. You know, you look in their eyes and it's worse than the fluoride stare. You know, it's like looking into the eyes of a demon almost. Probably is looking into the eyes of a demon. But I mean, we're talking about spiritual warriors here too, right? So we're supposed to have warriors in our culture, you know, like you're talking about. We're supposed to have that type of service in our culture. There always has been that service, and that service has been, tied up in a monetary ideology and also tied up into a moral relativistic ideology, right? And that's a big issue. Those are the biggest issues, right? The selfishness, the moral relativity, the solipsism that goes along with it, the belief in authority that goes along with it. See, originally warriors were in alignment with nature and understanding the natural laws, and they protected their tribe, they protected their family, they protected the individuals that needed protection who may not be able to protect themselves, you know. And this is something that we've lost communion with. You know, we've definitely lost a lot of connection with this side of ourselves. This is why I really love the Norse people and the Norse culture, because they're so robust and they keep that warriorship strong within them. You know, that's why it's so so popular nowadays because we're so lacking with that in our culture. And we see all these TV shows and all these bands coming out about the Norse and the Vikings and all this stuff. It's like, well, why are we so attracted to it? It's because we have a deficiency there, because our warriors in our culture are proxies of what they're supposed to be. They're not actually those things. They are the inversion of those things, right? And they have no spiritualness within their activities of their daily lives. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy. I want to bring up a little analogy here, though, since we're kind of talking about, getting through to these people. I think one thing that happens with a lot of children is that we have this concept called the devouring mother coming from Freud. And, Freud didn't get everything right, but I believe he got this right. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the devouring mother, but
I've come across it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like the idea the mom nurtures you into submission, to such a degree, and they just devour all your spiritualness, and then you become so codependent upon that. It's kind of like the what's that fairy tale story called, where the kids go out in the woods and they find the
Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, that's what it is. So that's the devouring mother, the old grandma that's living in the gingerbread house, that fattens you up and then wants to eat you. That's the devouring mother. So that's the idea. They keep you infantile, right? So the devouring mother will keep you infantile. And that's the thing about this whole culture. They want to keep us infantile. Look at the whole generation of kids growing up right now. At least let's look at the kids in 15 to 25. Most of them are so infantile. They can't function in the real world. Yeah. I mean, I can say that's a healthy blanket statement that all of them are infantile.
There might be like
a few,
a small minority, like a good clump handful.
Right.
That are aware.
Right.
But I agree with you.
What breeds this idea of needing to obey the authority, right? And that authority becomes the state or the church, one or the other. And they're both just dogmatic religions. So the devouring mother instills this idea of the belief in authority into the children and keeps them adolescent so that they don't have to take responsibility for anything that they do. And that's why we have like so many mothers out there that totally are so overprotective of their children and never allow them to do any kind of risk taking in their own lives and never give them the tools. I heard this statement. My grandmother told me this the other day. She said, a good parent is a parent who teaches their children, when they're a good parent, they've taught their children that the parent has become unnecessary. It's something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but she's pretty much saying is that if you're a good parent, you become unnecessary at a certain extent because your children grow up and take responsibility for themselves, Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean, because that's part of our job is to render ourselves obsolete. At one point in time, our children, they no longer they no longer necessarily need us to be there at every waking moment or to help them with every problem. The goal is to teach them the skills that are necessary for them to solve their own problems, to critically think about things, to, wade their way through the mire and the muck of life. Now, we are an asset as parents to always be available because you care for your children to the day you die. That is my job, to care. It's the care that is necessary after a certain point. And my physical involvement with the day-to-day stuff will go away. It will not be necessary as often as it is now.
Right.
But in the meantime, why is it necessary now? Because it's my job to teach them the things that they need to know in order to take care of themselves when they get to a certain stage in life. And hopefully I do a good job. No one ever is a perfect parent. It does not exist. There are things but that's the beautiful thing about the spirit. That's how the spirit evolves. It evolves through my God, it evolves.
I see the cat.
You trade. Never mind. What I was getting at is that the spirit evolves in a way, not only in the individual, but through the course of time, over the span of generations, where the law of correspondence exists in the human form through the generations of people that you produce through your family lineage. That's the law of correspondence. My children are a fractal image, myself and my wife, and they will continue out my spirit, and their spirit and mine are alike. They have their own individuated unit of consciousness. Sure. But we did the deed that brought them into the physical world. And however that spirit gets attached to the physical body, I don't know. I can't answer that right now. Maybe I'll never be able to answer that. Maybe no one will ever be able to answer that. That's not up for us to really debate at the moment. But it exists nonetheless. They have a spirit of their own. But that's another form of spiritual evolvement, evolution. Sorry, evolvement. What a word.
Might as well make it up. I'm cool with
Okay.
it. Um,
But
Another
yeah,
thing I wanted to say was, it's almost better to even leave a lot of these people alone. And I don't mean like the police officers. I just mean like a person who has a blank slate in their mind is better off than a person who's been propagandized and mind controlled and has a brain and a mind that's filled with falsehood and errors. You
but
know,
the
they're
problem is
closer to truth than the people who are filled with falsehood and errors, you know?
But the problem with that comes in when the person that's filled with falsehood and error, their actions, we still feel the consequences for their actions in the grand aggregate of all creation. There, where we're going to still feel the consequences of their falsehood and error. So that's this as well as I do. That's how karma works in one aspect, is that we will feel those consequences as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
nature is going to hurl those consequences at those people, because they don't like natural law. The truth is it does not care whether or not you understand it. You're still going to feel the consequences of it regardless. So that's why
Absolutely.
it's so important to reach out to the people. And yeah, you want to leave them alone and everything, but we kind of have a moral obligation to not leave them alone. You know what I mean?
I think you misunderstood what I was saying there. I'm not saying leave the people alone that have the falsehood and errors. I'm talking about the children. They're better off left alone than to be propagandized with all the indoctrination, because they're closer to truth than the ones who are actually causing the harm, where it's going to be much more difficult to get through to those individuals. And that's where our work goes, is with the individuals who do have the falsehoods programmed into their mind. So I'm saying that an individual who doesn't have all that propaganda is closer to the truth, even though he doesn't have much knowledge. A person who doesn't have academic knowledge, a person who's never been educated, who's just living out in nature, you know, he's closer to the truth than the individual who's grown up in a society that's programmed him with all this, junk, just garbage data, you know, and I would rather see a society based off of that. I'd rather see, because you were talking about ignorance, right? Well,
Sure.
there's the ignorance of like an individual living out in the woods who has no connection to anything else, and somebody may even put that in nescience. At a form, it could be a form of nescience because they're disconnected from technology and things like this. But there's also a form of ignorance there going on too, and I think that they're much better off, obviously, you know.
After hearing you elaborate on that further, yeah, I did misunderstand you. Apologies. I know you're not
Oh no,
offended
it's all right.
by that, but you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. If I had a better understanding of what you had said the first time around, I probably would have came back and responded by saying something a little like this. You're absolutely correct. People that are starting out, and if their only exposure to gaining knowledge is that by the way of nature, they're going to, by the time they're our age, have a much better understanding of the operations of nature than we do presently, and they'll be able to have a more instinctual knowledge of it, whereas we might have had to pick up some books and really do some hard heavy lifting in order to gain that knowledge. They're just going to be That's going to be what they know. They instead of having to seek it, they're going to be just forever have been living a life where that's what they're gaining from the very start. So yeah,
Absolutely.
very brilliant point, Brandon. Thank you for having patience through my misunderstanding of what
Oh,
you
it's
said.
all right.
That's another thing
I mean,
about
go
the
ahead.
that's another thing about the spiritual growth and what we do every day at this point in time is that we're going to have misunderstandings when we're having conversations with people and debates or disagreements or whatever. We need to be able to, as a community at least, amongst ourselves, again, talking about my little speech at the beginning of the show tonight. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to come together and be like, "Hey man, you might have misunderstood what I said," and then be like, "Oh shoot, yeah, maybe I did. Let me look at it again. Let me have that respect. Let me have that look. Let me look again and see what I may
Absolutely.
have missed. Maybe I missed something the first time. My bad. Let's move on together. Let's get
Yeah.
over it. Grow up. Let's lift each other up. Let's inspire each other to be better because
Right, right.
no one else is going to do it, you know? And um, there's another point about order followers that I was thinking about, and and I don't know if I really want to bring it back there, but it's something that crossed my mind when you were talking about um, being able to, if we were free, if we were free in spirit, what we would be able to do in case of an incident like I brought up, a kidnapping. Well, what am I going to do? If we were free, if we weren't being dominated, we would have a much better answer to that. That you know what I mean? So where that's another way that we're being held down and we're in a state of duress is that we don't aren't allowed to explore the options that we would otherwise be able to if we were free. And that's keeping our spirit down to be able to explore nature and the universe in an open and free way. So I just wanted to point that out.
I
Um,
agree with you. I actually heard somebody tell me one time that nobody has the right to come in and defend another person. And I thought, how fucking sick you must be to actually think that way. You know,
right.
like your neighbor doesn't have the right to come over and help your grandmother when she is in need. You know, what if there's a thief breaking in and they're armed and she's, in a wheelchair and can't defend herself and she's 70, 80 years old? Like, you don't think they have the right to step up and stop that from happening? But then you turn around and you support the police force who are not going to get there in time, who are completely immoral trash, you know. And it's like, I would rather have my neighbor step up than calling the police force, in that situation. And we see that all over the place, where kids try to step up and actually do the right thing. Let's say in a school ground, in a schoolyard, and there's like a fight breaking out, and then one of the kids runs over and stops the fight, but he ends up swinging on the bully who actually started the fight, and then they all get in trouble because of this, right? They're all in trouble now because there is no differentiation between the proper use of force and the acts of violence, and the parents and the teachers, they don't care. They don't care to do an investigative process to figure out who actually started it. They're just too lazy, so everybody gets in trouble. That's a big issue here, is that a lot of people are lackadaisical when it comes to like actually pinpointing who started it. And it's also about this new age pacifism where they're like, okay, it's kind of like this communistic ideology too, where it's like, okay, we don't want to put enough time into actually investigating this because I feel bad if there's actually someone I can point out in the group and say, that's the problem. That person's the problem right there. Instead, everybody's the problem. So that way it's all equal, right? Whoever was involved, they're all the problem. That's the way they solve the issue, rather than saying that's the person who started it. That's the individual who did the initiation of wrongful use of force onto an individual. And that's the person who needs to be, taken to justice in whatever means necessary, or separated from the group if necessary, and ostracized, and somehow dealt with, obviously.
Right.
And they're just like, nope, forget it. Everybody is the problem, including the victims. They're all the initiators of this action that is taking place. It's despicable, you know and it's really a communistic ideology, and it's also very lazy, obviously. So I can't stand that. Since I was a kid, I couldn't stand that stuff because I went to martial arts very early on, you know And I went to Shaolin Do, I went to Kempo, I did Kung Fu, I did all kinds of different martial arts. And that was the thing that they taught you, is first of all, you only use the amount of force that's necessary to put down the oncoming attack. That's it. You use the necessary amount of force to put down that individual and make sure the attack stops. That's it. You don't go any further. And sometimes if it's exceeding that, then you have to go a little bit, to the extreme to actually put them down because of what they're doing. If your life is threatened or something like this, right? And that may become necessary, obviously, to take that individual's life. But and the point of that is that obviously there's an initiator of the violence, and then obviously there's a victim of that violence where you have the right of self-defense, and that's not a form of violence. And I think that's a big issue with voyeurism, right? Is the idea of not being able to discern what's violence and what's not. I think that's one of the biggest issues in our culture as well, is a lot of people don't know the rightful use of force from the wrongful use of force. And a lot of people have pawned this off on other services. And it's not just the police and military. They pawn it off in many different ways. Think about it, like self-defense against illnesses, right? Or sickness. Right. It's pawned off on the medical industry. It's pawned off on the allopathic medicine. It's always like, just sideswiped onto somebody else. You do it. You take care of it. We have no personal responsibility to take care of ourselves. That's why I like naturopathic medicine and anything that takes you back to nature, because nature really is the answer. Wherever there's a problem, nature has a solution for that. It's just we have to be at a high enough consciousness level and in tune. We have to be able to intuit this stuff too. That's the thing. They want to destroy the intuition. And a lot of natural law, you can only intuit. A lot about the spiritual nature can only be intuited. That's it. And as long as you don't have intuition, then you're pretty much lost. You have no direction to be able to guide yourself through this abyss, in the spiritual realm. So that's a big issue. I think the intuition is a big guiding force for people when it comes to being able to accurately find solutions for the problems that they're facing on a spiritual level and a materialistic level.
Yeah, that example that you gave about the schoolyard brawl, and no one's responsible for it. Everyone's going to reap the same consequences. It absolutely it does. The only thing that matters is who started it. That's the only thing that matters. And the broad stroke, the broad brush that they paint with, where everyone's going to be held at fault. What it does is it kind of imprints this, it teaches lack of responsibility. And it's through that lack of responsibility that people are kept in a childish mindset. And that childish mindset is the impetus to not having any spiritual growth. Without responsibility, what we're looking at here is a bunch of people with one foot nailed down, and they're just running in circles. They're just moving around and around and around in circles, and they're never, ever, ever getting anything done. And that's what it's all about, is actually getting some work done here to progress in freedom and to progress in spiritual awareness. And I liked how that you gave that analogy, because it brought that idea to mind about the lack of responsibility that's being taught. And that's where really it all comes down to, is being able to look inward and see what you have done and be like, okay, I've done this thing. How can I be better? Or how can I change,
Absolutely.
And without having the response of actually pointing the finger outward. Sometimes it's necessary to be like, no, you did this thing. You did it. No one else. You did it. Own it, dude. Own up to it. Because nothing's ever going to get better if you can't own up to your own mistakes. Say, yeah, no one else is responsible for that but me. I'm responsible for my own actions here. No one else. I own my mistakes. That's the mindset that a lot of people are afraid to get into, because they fear looking at themselves. All their life had been excuse after excuse after excuse has been made for them. They've been put into this victimhood mentality where nothing is ever their fault and it's always somebody else did this to me. Somebody did this to me. No, dude, you did it to you. Like most of the time it's like things that people do to themselves that bar us from having any sort of spiritual growth while we're here. And the dark occult psychopaths that consider themselves in charge of this place, they know that and they're using it as a weapon against us. And it's just incrementally done to people from a very, very young age. So that way when they are physically big, they're still mentally small.
Right, right. Well said. Very well said. Yeah, another issue with the spiritual warrior dilemma that we have is the new age movement, you know. So the
Yeah.
new age movement has definitely just emasculated men in many ways to teach just absolute passivity. And I've heard this many, many times that, you know, you as the victim, you're responsible for the harm that's been done upon you because you attracted it with your mindset. And it's like, oh, really? Really? Okay. So you're going to tell me, let's say you got a situation where there's a priest and there's a child there, and that child is a victim of that priest sexually. That priest sexually assaulted that child, you know, this pedophile monster. You know, you're telling me it's the problem that the child is the problem, you know, that the child attracted it because the child's mindset, that's what it is? Really? You got to be really sick to think that. And that's that victimhood, you know? It just takes it all back that you can never place blame on somebody else. And I get it. You got to look at yourself first. That's so true. But you know, when we're talking about children, they don't have that complete ability to introspect the way that we can as adults, you know. It's like what are you going to do in that situation when a child runs up to you and says he did it and you're like, no, you attracted that, you know, that was you, you know. And then the other issue is obviously we have a war against testosterone, you know, going on chemically in our food, in our air, in our water, you know, radionics, 5G. We have all kinds of stuff that's attacking all the chemicals in our body that keep us healthy in a good homeostasis, you know, so that we can function and defend ourselves in a in an adequate way against these onslaughts. And you know, we see this all across the board that testosterone is declining. And it's like, oh no, that's fine, you know, let's give these kids a bunch of drugs that, you know, reduce testosterone or increase it over here, and kids that don't need it, you know. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's completely perverted and inverted.
Yeah, there is they again, the dark occult psychopaths that consider themselves in charge of this place, they understand these things and they're using every single weapon in their arsenal to come after people in every which way that they can possibly imagine. The drugs, everything. It's all about control. It's all about control of every aspect of your life, of your body, of your mind, everything. They drug the kids at a young age because that's when they're the most vulnerable. Every human being on the face of the planet is most vulnerable when they're a child, both in their mind
That's
and in
right.
their body. Mind and body vulnerability here. It's ridiculous that people can't see this by now. But this just goes to show that their plan, these people, these psychos, their plan is working perfectly because they're organized. They have their shit together. And in a roundabout way of speaking, the universe is going to respect people that have their shit together.
Oh yeah,
The universe,
absolutely.
when they have their goals and they do the things and they go out and they fulfill they achieve their goals, the universe is going to respect that regardless, regardless
Yeah,
if
I'll give a
it's evil or good.
personal example of that. Actually, I never thought I would be where I'm at today. You know, never thought I would own my own house, that I would be producing so much great content, that I would be influencing people in such a positive way on a wide scale, you know. And it wasn't until I started to actually get in alignment with truth and have a service to the one great spirit and to truth that these great forces came to my aid. You know, before that I was completely disassociated from everything and just lost in the chaos of everything. And I had lots of good knowledge early on. I just didn't have any direction to point it because I grew up as an anarchist mostly, so I actually did have access to a lot of good knowledge early on. But, even as an anarchist growing up, you're still living in a statist world. You still feel the effects of statism all around you. It still affects you, so I had to go through my own deconditioning and, and reprogramming and deal with the shadow and all kinds of work on myself. So a lot of people were like, oh yeah, you grew up that way, so you had it easy. Oh no, I didn't have it easy. It was very hard. It was very, very hard. A lot of people don't get that. I had it easy in certain aspects because I had assets that a lot of people don't have, like reading 1984, before I was 12, but I didn't have any direction for that. I didn't have anywhere to point it. I didn't know what to do with it because there was no real spiritual peers out there that were teaching those things. So I went to Buddhism. I went to the Eastern philosophies because I was really into martial arts and stuff like that. And then that kind of led me into, like Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle and stuff like that. And then I started to see the issues with that. So then I came to Western occultism from that. And then from there, I got into Western theology and philosophy and stuff like that. And it really solidified after I found Mark Passio. And he had this tapestry where he took all that knowledge and put it into one thing. And it really allowed me to find a good direction to point, my bow at, to hit that mark, to hit that bullseye that we're looking for. And great aid came to my life because of that, because I aligned myself. And we see this it doesn't happen immediately. It takes many, many years sometimes because you got to be consistent with it. That's the thing. The universe will respect consistency. That's why the dark occult gets done what they're getting done, because they have consistency and unity. They're unified and they're consistent with it. They're very precise. They're very methodical about it. They know how to time manage. And a lot of people don't know how to manage their time in their life. And as we've said many times, attention is one of the spiritual currencies, and where we're putting our attention to will definitely, it's either going to lead us to something good or it's going to lead us to something very negative, depending on our level of consciousness and how we're wielding our attention, So we really, really need to be careful about time management. And I think, we should have started out with this actually, like the definition of spirit, right? It means breath, right? So that's very important to understand and to understand why all these ancient, physical defensive traditions like Eastern martial arts incorporates that breathing technique. The breathing technique is so important because it really gets the blood flowing. It really gets the chemicals working in the body very well. And the spirit comes through all those chemicals, because the spirit is in every little atom, every little molecule within yourself. Every little thing about you on the microcosmic level is made up of spirit. Your whole body, it's not just a vessel. It's a vessel created from the essence of spirit. It's a manifestation of spirit. So I don't take this separatist idea that I'm just living in a meat suit, and it's like, oh, who cares about my body? I've heard it so many times. It's just a space suit. It's just a meat suit. It's just a vessel. Who cares what happens to it? Very sadistic, very, 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 what am I thinking of? It's just very negative towards yourself. Self-hate, pretty much.
It's pretty narrow-minded.
It's very narrow-minded, masochistic. That's what I was looking for. Very masochistic, because you can just do whatever you want to your body then. Doesn't matter what you do to your body. And I'm not saying you don't have the right to, harm yourself in certain aspects, but you can go too extreme with that, obviously, where it's actually causing harm onto other people because of that, because of you harming yourself. Let's say like the responsibility that parents have for children, and you're just a absolute junkie with heroin, well, you're actually harming your children. You don't have the right to do that. You have the right to put things into your body up to the point that it's not harming other people, So, like, if you could actually consciously use something like that where you're not harming your child because of that, then yeah, okay. But most likely, most people can't do that, especially if you're an addict, obviously. So we've lost touch with that spirit because we don't have any true rites of passage anymore, do we? You
No.
know, our rites of passage is go to school and graduate. That's it. And they call that a rite of passage. It's like, what the hell is this thing? And they send you out into this fucking slave world. And I was homeschooled most of the time, so I didn't have to deal with that too much. But I watched every single one of my friends fail. They go out, they become alcoholics, they become drug users, and they just go down the cesspool, they go down the toilet, and they're in the septic tank. They're not doing anything with their lives now. And it's just so sad to see that with a lot of people. There's no true cohesive system for us to advance our own consciousness throughout our youth, to build up not only the understanding of principles, but to build up things like understanding the trivium, critical thinking, to be able to pattern recognize. They don't really have, we don't really have any form of cohesive tradition that actually inspires evolution for the culture anymore on an individual level. And that's why we're not breeding into higher types anymore. So we have to take this to an epigenetic level when it comes to spiritual warriorism. And what that means is that we really have to generationally build good traditions and build good habits so that we can manifest and grow as a being, as a spiritual being, because we're all one at the fundamental level. We're all one great spirit. We're all fractal images of the one great spirit is what I mean by that. Yeah. And, we are individuals, but at the same time, we're all part of the collective. And we have a responsibility to the whole. That doesn't mean the greater good outweighs the individual. The individual's rights come before, the idea of the greater good. That's how government gets off. It's like, oh yeah, this is the greater good by violating all the individuals. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
But like the real greater good is recognizing that we have an inherent right to be free.
Yeah. The greater good is freedom.
And the greater and like the greater good, it also involves not doing things that take those freedoms away from us.
Absolutely.
Like that's the real greater good, is attaining and maintaining that freedom. And by any means necessary, really. Just most people, they don't understand what real freedom is. And I've said that the body's the vessel, and yeah, it is, but that's
I use that. Yeah,
this is where this is what we use to get the work done here. This is the spirit's way of taking action. You know what I mean? So, and that's what's going to heal this, is taking right action. That's why I tell everybody at the end of every show that I do, like, we need to understand the difference between right and wrong and choose with our own free will to do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do, not because you're expecting an award or anything like that, but just because it's the right thing to do. And
absolutely.
It's like, this is the equation to freedom, is do the right thing no matter the cost, because it's the right thing to do. And that's that, but I'm man, what a conversation it's been tonight.
It's true wisdom, that's true wisdom. And I think that another thing is we're trying to really nail down the idea of the spiritual warrior, right? And that means that we have to be a true rebel. We have to understand what rebellion really means, and we have to really fundamentally ask ourselves what we want in reality. What do we want? Can we actually say that we really want true freedom as a species? Can we actually say that? Because if we do, then we're not meeting the requirements for it. I don't think people really want true freedom. I honestly don't at this point. I've asked so many people about this, and when it comes down to it, yeah, they want little modicums of freedom, like little bit sizes of freedom, but they don't want holistic freedom. Because like we've talked about many times, it comes with a lot of responsibility to have holistic freedom. They want a lot of other people to take care of them, is what that comes down to. So one more thing I wanted to say, I know we're probably running out of time here, but we need to be unified as a warrior clan. We need to be unified in spirit, in mind, in body, and in guts, in the heart and guts. And when we do that, we find other people who are doing the same thing. And when we come together and we teach each other to become strategic and tactical, we need tact when it comes to these things. We need strategy. And I think that one of the biggest dilemmas is that a lot of people just kind of leave it up in the air when it comes to the war that we're facing is we have the strategy. Me and you understand the strategy. We don't even need to communicate that all the time. It's unspoken, because we're already on that level of sophistication. We know what we need to do with our own talents. And when it came down to it, if it really came down to it, we could work together really quickly, really, really easily, But a lot of other people might not be able to have that kind of cohesiveness. So we need to build the brother bond with everybody, or the sister bond, the brother and sister bond with everybody, so that we can cohesively work together towards this goal and get better, at what we're trying to do. And it doesn't just have to be digital content. You pointed that out earlier, digital content obviously is really, really important to do. It's one of the most important things out there to do, but that's not the only thing. And you can't just jump right into it immediately. You got to do some work on yourself first. I don't want to see a nihilist getting on here, like trying to promote freedom and nihilism at the same time. Like, do some work on yourself first, at least, have some understanding of principles and natural law and stuff like this. I mean, I see it all the time, and we see all this we see all this garbage content that's coming out. Like, do some freaking work on yourself. So it's not just about producing more content. It's about producing quality content once you've done the shadow work, once you've, really improved your own consciousness and your own spirit and your own conscience. You got to get your conscience in order, get your compass for right and wrong action in order. And it might be on a local level. It might be on a, a wide scale level, like we are trying to do. But at least do something, And I've run into this issue in the punk community, actually, where my friends are actually like, oh, they're like, what did they say to me? One guy told me, he's like, oh, why are you even doing conferences? Why are you doing presentations and podcasts and blah, blah, blah? And he was all bitching about all the content I'm doing. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, don't worry. I talk to my coworkers. And that's where it's really at. You talk to your coworkers and the people that are in your personal life. And I said, yeah, you do. But you don't stop there. You think that's enough? You think it's enough to just snow globe yourself into just the people that you're working around? That's it, right? That's all you need to get through to. You got some knowledge, and those are the only people you're going to talk to when you have all this technology at your fingertips and you know how to use it. What are you using the technology for? You're sharing music, you're listening to music, you're uploading videos, but you can't upload anything about the occult or freedom or sovereignty or, anything like that. You can't do that. You can't really get into the warrior spirit, the digital warrior spirit, if you want to call it that way. Right. So, I mean, really, it's so mind boggling. And I couldn't believe that he actually said that to me. I was just like, what is wrong with you, dude? Like, yeah, talk to the people in front of you, but also talk to people all around you. And he was attacking me because I'm talking to people in front of me and all around me. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? But yeah, it's just ridiculous, So we, I know we're getting close to the end here, but I think spiritual warriorism really is, first, you got to take care of yourself, and then you extend that out into the world. And if you don't do the battle in the inside, you have to have the internal warrior first. You really got to work on the internal aspects of your own subconscious and your own psychological deficiencies, because they want weakness in society, and you have to combat that weakness with strength. They want people to be cowards, and you have to be courageous. They want people to be lazy, so you got to be motivated. You got to be active. That's what you got to be. You can't stop. we can't stop with this. And people get comfortable. You brought up the pitching the tent, issue. Well, it's not just that they pitch a tent. A tent is temporary. They build houses on the side of the mountain.
Hmm.
That's what they do. They live there. They stop and they never progress. They're like, oh, stop in the air. This is it. It's not just camping. It's not just a camping zone. They make it their home, and it's horrible. It's definitely horrible.
Yep. Yeah, it is. Yeah, good point. Let's ditch the tent and let's say they're setting up a log cabin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're sitting there, they're gonna drink their hot cocoa inside next to a nice fire halfway up the slope, and they're perfectly fine with that. It's like, no, dude, we got to reach the summit. We got to
Yep.
we got to get to the furthest point where there's nowhere else to go once we get there. We've gone to the end. Much like this podcast tonight, we're nearing the end. We've
Yep.
almost hit the summit of this podcast tonight. It's been a wild ride. Maybe hopefully some people really get some good information out of this, and it inspires people to really, sometimes it's hard to take a good look at yourself. I get it. It was hard for me to do that for myself, for years and years, but you got to do it. You got to take a look at yourself and see what you're doing that's affecting the rest of everybody else around you, because that's how we really grow and make a difference. Like you're right. At first it starts within, and then it reaches other people.
Oh, absolutely. And it's been a pleasure being on here with you again. I haven't been, on any podcast for a while, so I'm hoping to get some more content out here. I'm glad that you wanted me to come on for this episode. I think we really definitely hit all the points that we were trying to make. And I was just kind of running off the top of my head. Honestly, I didn't prepare for this in any way. So I might have been a little rusty with that. But I definitely would recommend for people to check out any true Eastern warrior out there, because you'll really find a lot of good principles that are instilled there, at least morally, more so than the Western warriors. You'll find a lot more consistency in the philosophy there. And that's not the whole solution. I'm just saying their warriors tend to have a better balance, like the last samurai, and I mean the samurai who didn't work for the state and stuff like that, who were technically Ronins, technically. But the other thing is, we talked about Vikings and we talked about the Norse, and I just wanted to bring up one more point about that, which is the breathing. They used to have breathing techniques before their wars and before their battles, and the screaming, the invocation of the sacred feminine spirit through the screaming. So they would just scream at their enemies over the hillsides, sometimes for days, before the battle would take place. And that's the invocation of that sacred feminine, because vibration is the feminine energy. So, and that's really important. Sometimes you do got to scream. Sometimes you got to get to the top of the mountain and start screaming. Sometimes you got to go to your window and scream, like the movie, The Network, right? I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Right. So yeah, I'll leave it with that. So I just wanted to finish that point up there.
I'm a human being, goddammit.
Yeah, right.
And I won't take this anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's
man,
a good movie.
A very good movie. I recommend that for anybody out there watching this, to go watch Network and treat yourself. So Brandon, it's been the pleasure's all mine, man. Thank you so much for coming on here, man. There's really no need to prepare for a conversation like this. You did wonderful as always. So thank you so much for your time and attention this evening, and everyone out there watching this, thank you for your time and attention today, and on the replay if you're catching this on some RSS feed that exists out there. But yeah, so I have a couple of things to go over before we say goodbye to Brandon, but I want to give Brandon here a chance to give a shout out to his links, his websites, and where you can find the rest of his work before we show off the housekeeping. So Brandon, go right ahead, bud.
Oh, yeah. You can find my work at seedtruth.com. There's plenty of presentations, and all my links, honestly, are on that website now. But if you're really interested in getting to some of them directly, you can go to the onegreatworknetwork.com. You'll find me under the content page, Brandon Martin. And then also you can find me at cubbyhole.com. That's CUBBYWHOLE.com. That's the podcast that I co-host with Nate Cap. And I'll be looking forward to getting back on that podcast here soon. But I would recommend going and starting at episode 1 and then moving your way forward chronologically, because it's a tapestry and you have to start at step 1 and progressively move through it, or you're just going to miss out on everything. And we really have been, Nate really has been putting out some great work on Freemasonry in that lately. And I would definitely recommend people to really start to get interested in esoteric Freemasonry. That's something that I really do talk about a lot. But yeah, that's it. And then we do have, the conference coming up as well. So I think you have a slide or something to talk about that. Yeah. Seed 5 Metamorphosis with all types of top caliber speakers. This is technically the first live announcement of this besides a public announcement on Facebook. And it's September 23rd and 24th, 2023. And I would highly recommend for everybody to tune in. We're going to have a lot of really interesting things going on. We're really going to be engaging with the chat. So we want to see a lot of people in the chat. I'm going to have a live chat on the screen in between presentations with the host. So all of your chat will be able to, all the viewers will be able to see your chat right on the screen, and you'll be able to engage. There's a lot of other things too that we're going to be putting together. Really interested in that. And also I will be speaking at the Funnel 3 conference this year. Is it 3 or is it 4? I think it might be 4. 3. Okay. I couldn't remember they did that other one or not, but yeah, 3. So I'm really interested in getting that. They offered me a position to speak there this June, I believe, the summer solstice, right? So really excited about that.
Very nice. Yeah. So Seed 5 Metamorphosis, a free online conference about the occult, esotericism, freedom, history, philosophy, symbolism, and natural law, September 23rd through the 24th of this year, 2023, featuring a very, very distinguished list of speakers. Myself, James Cordiner, Douglas Martin, Nate Cap, Mark Passio, Chris Jansen, Will Keller, Brandon Martin, Leslie Powers, Brandon Spencer, Patty Lager, Dorian Greens, Cullen Smith, Dylan McCormick, Mark Devlin, Corey Andrulot, Logan Hart, and Sethica Esposa. And that is, so thank you so much, Brandon, for extending me the invite to speak there. I'm working on a little something. My presentation is going to be called Fear is Illusion. So we're going to be taking a deep dive look into how fear is being used as a weapon against us to keep us in a low state of consciousness. So that's the thesis of my presentation, and I can't wait to give that information to all the people that are going to be watching that on the 23rd or 24th, wherever I land on the lineup. So I'm very, very excited for this, even as a viewer for the rest of the conference. So I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. So yeah, definitely, guys, everyone out there, go check out Brandon Martin's work and see for yourself what this guy is capable of. So we have Seed 5, and then we also have the Black Pill Digest. It's a show, relatively new, once a month show that Sean McCann and I host, and it's typically the last Saturday of every month, but this time around we're going to be doing 2 episodes in the month of March. And the first Saturday of March, we will be discussing the public school system, and we have a couple of guests lined up to come on and discuss the public school system, government school, indoctrination camps. So that's going to be exciting. So tune into that. They'll go over to the Odyssey channel, Black Pill Digest Odyssey channel, like and subscribe to that so you don't miss out on what's going on with that show. And then a big part of the reason why we had this talk tonight anyways, and why technology is so important and whatnot, is because this is a big part of the battlefield, folks. And if you want to get in on the battle, if you're a person that thinks that you're capable of doing a show or having a podcast like Brandon here or myself, then I couldn't recommend enough going over to how to become thetruemedia.com. This year open enrollment starts on April 1st, and how to become the True Media is an online technology skill sharing seminar hosted by Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com. His schedule this year is going to be every Monday evening from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. And the class starts on Monday, July 10th of 2023, and it's going to go until December 11th. And I got to bring this up. Mark, if you're listening to this, I'm noticing a typo there. December 11th, 2023 is when the class stops. So that's a total of 23 class sessions. There's not a lot of room. But enrollment starts on April 1st, and it stops. Enrollment closes on July 4th if he hasn't filled all the spaces by then. So go to howtobecomthetruemedia.com, bookmark the website, and keep your wits about you. Don't miss out on this, because this is a very intensive seminar, and it's very, very important that we all learn these skills if you want to get in on this, because this is where the bad information is coming from. This is where all the bullshit's coming from. They're using tech, they're using the media, and in order to combat it, if you know the truth, if you know natural law, if you have it in you to fight, then this is a large part of where the battle is being waged, and we have to be aware of that. You can do the work outside of this space. That's great. That's wonderful. I implore you to do so. But if you have a little bit of time that you can carve out during the week to do this as well, I also implore that you do that as well. So before we say goodbye this evening, I just, like I always do, I already said it tonight, so I'll leave it at that. But I love you all. And if it weren't for that, I would not do this. I don't want to do this. I want to make sure that people know I do not want to be doing this. There's much better things with my time that I want to be doing, but I really understand the moral obligation to bring this knowledge to as many people as I possibly can friggin' bring it to. And this is the way to do it. So, one more thing before we go. I'm still trying to get the funds together to get a ticket to the Liberty Forum. So if anybody wants to donate any money to me so I can afford a ticket to that, you can go to my PayPal. The link will be included on there. You can go to my page on the One Great Work Network and the creators section. You can go right over there and donate money to me. It's the best way to do that. Or you can choose, $5 or $10, whatever. The ticket costs like $100, $120, something like that to go. And I already have a few dollars gathered up. Some people have been donating. I really appreciate that. And but I haven't reached my goal yet. So I'm really trying to crowdsource that, because I don't have a lot of money. And please help if you can. If not, that's fine too. And if I don't reach the amount of money that I need in order to afford the ticket, I will refund all the donations. I don't want the money for anything else. So that's a promise from me to you. PayPal keeps track of who's donating, so I can just return it if I don't need it. So that's it. Any last words, Brandon?
I'll probably donate to that.
Oh, thanks. All right, thank you.
I'll get you there.
Thanks,
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, like always, and I look forward to coming back on and speaking with you again.
Excellent, man. Well, the pleasure's all mine. Have yourself a wonderful night. And everyone out there, again, agape, and jump in the pit. Get in on this action. I love you all.